June is the most wonderful time of the year. Pride Month, a pagan festival where all are welcome. A few traditions can be seen each year. Parades, marches, performances, moral panic that once in a while results in the introduction of deeply bigoted legislation that threatens to undo decades of progress. The most critical tradition of Pride, though, is obviously the rainbow. The rainbow remains a potent symbol of resistance and authenticity in the face of adversity, and it definitely hasn't been watered down. If it had been watered down, if it had lost its potency, it wouldn't be so beloved by corporations. Every year, companies and products show their support by putting rainbows on things. Thank God, I wasn't sure whether McDonald's supported McPride. Or how about the colorless Skittles? Because only one rainbow matters during Pride. Now you can celebrate Pride by wearing the ugliest fucking dress I've ever seen. See, corporations realized at some point that if a particular community represents at least 10% of the population, that's one hefty sponge to squeeze. In these campaigns, there's often a very vague allusion to something like love or being proud. Because sure, you could present Pride as a very specific celebration of a very specific mesh of communities, or you could present it as a big party celebrating love and being yourself. Words like love are loose and nondescript, and they produce warm, fuzzy feelings, and emphasizing them is a nice way to sidestep name-dropping any demographics or actually voicing a stance on anything. Because if you got more detailed, you'd piss off the conservatives. You don't want to gain one market at the expense of another. And surely, the way it is, this anodyne empty messaging wouldn't bother conservatives at all, right? They'd have nothing to say about it, right? The term rainbow capitalism is a catch-all for the phenomenon we're discussing. It's linked closely to pinkwashing, a term originally coined in relation to human rights issues in Israel to refer to the act of invoking a feel-good stance on LGBT rights to draw eyes away from injustices. Wow, Nestle has a rainbow logo for Pride. I'm sure that's a company that's great with human rights. Matters of LGBT rights have come more and more into center stage in the 21st century, and the standard reaction of powerful corporations is to squash these subjects into an easier, more normative frame. We saw this happen with feminism over the last couple decades, meaningful talking points about gender relations slowly being carved out of the turkey so that it could be plastered with hollow girl boss rhetoric. Rainbow products serve two functions. One, they try to shake as much cash from the out and proud pocket as they can, and two, they normalize and reinforce a simplified version of Pride, one that's not challenging, one that ignores material conditions in favor of scrutinizing the number of flags in a product lineup. It's Pride as fandom. Enter Kraft Real Gayo, a rainbow-colored Pride-themed mayonnaise. Smooth and sassy, the packaging proclaims, add Pride to your next BLT. It surfaced last year in June 2021 and it frolicked across the fields of the internet. At the start of this month though, it rose from the grave in a big way and circulated again, mostly on Twitter where a certain tweet has 40,000 retweets and well over 400,000 likes, but it's had some attention on other sites too, including a 9,000 note Tumblr repost and a few Reddit posts. I'm gonna rip the band-aid off now, nice and quick. If it wasn't obvious, Kraft Gayo is not a real product. It was created by Instagram user Dr. Photograph, who is also responsible for Mayoreo, Mayonster, and my personal favorite, Oops One Berry. This is actually Dr. Photograph's second version of this image. The original version was the one that circulated last year. This version was posted on June 2nd, 2022. One day later, Twitter user Kira Won't Miss reposted it with an added Snapchat caption conveniently obscuring Dr. Photograph's signature. I wonder what one might gain from doing that. So a lot of people assume this one was real, but there was no attempt at deception by Dr. Photograph. In a Distractify article by Corey Williams, Dr. Photograph is quoted clarifying the image's intent as a satirical commentary on rainbow capitalism, something which is, in my opinion, readily evident. Dr. Photograph is a really talented photoshopper, but I don't know how one could mistake their content for actual products without actively trying to. There are more than a few hints, even beyond the questionable practicality of multicolored mayonnaise, even beyond the Sonic Curry levels of decision-making that would lie behind a product like that. One big hint was that literally the only evidence of this existing was one image, better yet, two edited versions of one image, being repost it all over the place. If this was a real product, would you not expect somebody else on the planet to stumble on it in a store and post a photo? But okay, maybe you don't notice the lack of other photos. If the artist's watermark is covered, there's absolutely nothing in the image that would make it clear that it's fake. Bonus trans fat and closet-free eggs are definitely things that would make it onto official product packaging. Definitely not tells that this whole thing is an exaggerated satire. But despite all that, there's one massive tell that this image was a fake. And we'll talk about that later. A ton of people weighed in on the matter. Across social media, across posts, there's a small handful of recurring comments. And yes, that does include multiple people pointing out that the image isn't real, thankfully. A lot of people make exactly the joke you'd expect. A lot of people also just commented mayonnaise. Like, a lot of people did this. I couldn't even bother taking screenshots of all that because, like, that's not a real comment. It's not adding anything. Gayo is already a pun on gay mayo. Like, by extending it to mayonnaise, you're not actually saying anything. There's a handful of people expressing enthusiasm for the product, a desire to have it, which I guess is why rainbow capitalism works in the first place. And there's a lot of people venting about rainbow capitalism. And you know, I get it, I hate it too, but maybe we could direct that energy at actual examples rather than parodies. I think a lot of the norms of social media need to change, and that would include thinking before we speak so we don't just become a gear in the outrage machine, and it would also include not reposting jokes in ways meant to obscure the fact that they're jokes. One of the weirdest things though is a lot of people commented something like, "Is this real?" in a full spectrum from say it ain't so to neutral bewilderment to doe-eyed hope. And these comments are wild to me. Like, without even remarking on the believability of the product, you can look it up. I can't fathom the combination of circumstances where you'd be able to leave a comment on Reddit or Twitter or TikTok, but you wouldn't have access to Google. I can understand posing a general question if it's about a really specific topic, like a niche field of study or regional slang or something, but we're not talking about brain surgery here. I can also understand the impulse to remark something like, "There's no way that's real." But some people are clearly very affected by this hypothetical mayonnaise, yet they're just not looking it up. There's not automatically any harm in just commenting, "Is this real?" except when someone decides to reply with yes. One of the biggest types of response, though, is people being homophobic and transphobic, surprising nobody. Some are passively bigoted and some are unmasked. Some echo the cliche of insecurity around phallic foods. Some say, "Why are you marketing to the teeny tiny LGBT community?" which is such a mask-off moment for their attitude toward minorities. And a lot of people said they'd stop buying Kraft products, and some even tried to incite a boycott. That's right, a sizable number of conservatives got really mad about this fictional condiment, mad enough to swear off one of the most ubiquitous brands in the world. They threw down every moral panic card they have about the evil woke mob trying to brainwash the youth. Oh, won't someone please think of the children? The "Go woke, go broke" slogan is tellingly insular. It fascinates me that the evil corporations are a dark and sinister Illuminati hand pushing child-corrupting ideology, but they could also go broke from a couple thousand Twitter users whacking their keyboards. There is a threat so imminent it must be opposed, but you could oppose it by solving a two-piece jigsaw puzzle. It calls to mind the general homophobic and transphobic attitudes toward LGBT people as weak, subhuman, insignificant, but also infectious, pushy, so filthy and so other that you mustn't even touch them. Completely unrelated. I can't help but flash back to one of Echo's descriptors of fascism, that fascism needs an enemy to rally against, one who is both strong enough that action must be taken and weak enough that there's nothing to be afraid of. I don't know why that just popped into my head. Hi, it's Indigo from the future. So I've been editing and I just felt like there was something more I wanted to say about this. Because what's so fascinating about this situation is when it comes to the clash between rainbow capitalism and the extreme pushback against it, we're seeing two separate conservative responses to pride and LGBT rights. One tactic is to commodify pride, repackage it, and sell it as a product that doesn't challenge the status quo, reinforcing this standard where all bigotry now boils down to interpersonal rudeness and we don't talk about systemic problems or structural inequality. And the other tactic is to demonize LGBT people entirely, to pearl clutch and say that pride is all a sinful plot to normalize abusing children. And though these tactics both attempt to suppress ideas that threaten the status quo, they're at odds with each other. Because one side wants to allow minorities into oppressive structures, and the other side wants to stamp minorities out entirely. So, for these pearl clutchers to group powerful corporations in with leftists, for these pearl clutchers to see the efforts of powerful corporations to subdue progressivism and say these corporations are bowing their heads to leftists and trying to appease them, it's deeply telling. And all of these contradictions, including what I described before about the go woke, go broke thing, they make a lot more sense when you consider that the people involved worship the free market as a god. Anyway, back to the video. The whiners in question are showing how little they actually understand any piece of the phenomenon they're trying to remark on. This isn't corporations ceding to the woke LGBT mob, because politically literate LGBT people generally recognize that there's bigger fish to fry than whether or not the Disney store offers a rainbow Mickey. Remember how I said that there was a massive tell that the picture isn't real? Did you guess what it was? It's kind of staring us right in the face, front and center. Gayo, the name of it. I mentioned earlier that one of the key aspects of hollow pride cash-ins is slithering around actually saying anything. It's all meaningless allusions to love, heart, acceptance without any explicit reference to LGBT people. If the fifth largest food conglomerate in the world, one that's a major sponsor of Fox News by the way, is going to do a pride tie-in product, it's not gonna name drop gay people. And the raging conservatives just don't get that. Or maybe it's more accurate to say they don't want to get it. Because to think that this is a real thing to the point of taking action about it, you have to ignore every sign to the contrary. You have to blinker yourself, pretend to miss the punchline, because if you acknowledge the punchline, you lose the ability to be mad about it. You lose the ability to create an enemy. There is no shortage of real corporate pride cash-ins in the world, cash-ins that do no favors for the community, but these conservatives find their rage so necessary that they never bother to sift facts from jokes. They just throw it all into the industrial meat grinder. And when I say rage, I really mean it. The most minute acknowledgement of the existence of LGBT people, the mere depiction of a symbol associated with the community without explicit mention, sends them into a conniption. The presence of a pride-themed product does nothing for the LGBT community other than a sidelong glance that's at least not outwardly hostile. But even that acknowledgement infuriates these people. The mildest, shallowest, most facile and useless concession to the fact that people outside the dominant class exist enrages them. It's the war on Christmas mentality all over again, because they think that even that mild acknowledgement is too much. They think that there should be nothing, less than nothing. They want to eradicate all traces of certain demographics. And the only way they can justify that is with these appeals to think of the children, by suggesting that it is abuse to even permit children to be aware of LGBT people's existence, let alone to have respect. And I haven't even shown the worst of what I saw when I researched for this. I saw comments that truly disgusted me. People saying things that made my stomach turn. I am shocked yet unsurprised. that for some people, a doctored picture of fucking mayonnaise bangs out this apophenic roadmap starting at rainbow and ending at these writhing, raving descriptions of sex acts, descriptions intended to make the reader think of the act and its actor as vile, inhuman, other. Some of these commenters are saying, why do you want me to associate mayonnaise with gay sex? And the notion that they're jumping from the symbol of the rainbow, the idea of gay people, to their prudish abstraction of a sex act that they see as deviant and filthy is beyond revealing. I just kept seeing these horrible things and thinking, I cannot screenshot this. I cannot put this in my video. What I've shown is the tame stuff. And you know, at the end of the day, this whole thing makes me feel sad on a lot of levels. Sad that so many people get indoctrinated into what is essentially a cult fueled by rage. Sad that for so many people this vitriol is the default response to something ultimately meaningless. And sad about the creation of echo chambers where reality is whatever you want it to be, whatever lets you feed your indignant fire. Viral misinformation is a subject I've discussed more than once on my channel. Something about it fascinates me. The ease with which anyone can decide to adhere to a belief that isn't true, the ardent refusal to actively fact-check something or even make an obvious inference because the facts aren't convenient. The truth isn't something you can mock, it's not something you can get angry about, it's not something you can rally against. This is about more than just misinformation though. It would be really easy to just say Poe's Law and then call it a day. And you know, Poe's Law is supposed to mean any joke, any sarcasm, any irony or satire will always be mistaken for a sincerely held belief. But everyone kind of uses it as if it means it's impossible to tell the difference between earnestly held beliefs and jokes. And then that gets used to justify the misunderstanding rather than inspect why it happened in the first place. And then after the misunderstanding, what happens next? We have political movements being driven by this kind of mutual delusion. Some group of people locks themselves up in a room truth can't reach and they bounce back and forth these alternative facts, paint these new truths about transgender people or BLM or abortion or the education system or the pandemic or fucking mayonnaise so that they can self-indoctrinate, define their outgroup, and enact their holy violence. When I repeatedly express fears about the spread of misinformation, this is why. It's not just a matter of buying into things uncritically, it's a matter of crafting your own truth and springboarding off it. When Gayo spread and it got reposted and it caused controversy, Dr. Photograph took the whole thing with good humor. They have a whole Instagram story of just reactions to the Gayo thing. There are also instances of their more obvious jokes being taken seriously. And you know, you can say maybe there should have been more warning, but I also can't help but think if there was a massive "this is a joke" watermark over the picture, it would kind of be less funny. You can't call this a hoax, not on Dr. Photograph's part anyway. Could you call it a hoax on the part of the Twitter user that reposted it? By not only covering the artist's signature, but covering it with something that's meant to imply that this is a real thing somebody just encountered out in the wild? Was the intent to get exposure from the ensuing outrage? All publicity is good publicity? I don't know. But of course, whether this individual post had gone viral or not, those bigots would have still found something to get upset about. I hope you enjoyed the video. I thought this subject would be a lot more lighthearted than it ended up being. This definitely went to some places. I was exposed to some things. I'll think of some kind of fun outro so we can end on a more positive note. See ya. Hi gamers, I hope that didn't get too depressing. I promised you a lighthearted outro, and that is what you're getting. I'm going to celebrate Pride by creating my very own Rainbow Pride sandwich. Yeah, I can do a little rainbow capitalism in the kitchen. Kitchen-pitalism. We'll start with red, and obviously there's only one condiment that could be. For orange, I have this kind of quirky fig and orange spread. It's a pretty dark orange, but you know, orange is orange, right? For yellow, I thought I had mustard, the obvious choice, but it seems like I actually don't. But the battle's not over yet because I do have this like quirky bacon flavored mayonnaise, which now that I'm looking at it is not really all that yellow at all. It's kind of more of a beige salmon color. It was either this or honey, but don't worry, we can save this. I have this like truffle hot sauce. I put a couple drops on, it added a little bit of color. Green is nice and easy. Nice little streak of relish. I tried adding a little bit of lemon pepper to make the yellow stand out more. I don't think it's even visible, to be honest. Blue is not an easy color to shop for, but this video is about mayonnaise, so I made myself some blue mayo. Doesn't that look appetizing? Doesn't that look like it ended homophobia? Indigo is obviously the most important color of the rainbow, and that's why indigo is too good to be on this sandwich. Yeah, it has nothing to do with the fact that nobody's ever heard of a fucking indigo condiment. I don't want to be on a sandwich. I'm not putting myself on a sandwich and then eating myself. That's disgusting. So for Violet, I'm making a completely ordinary decision, and I'm putting my leftover beets from dinner on the sandwich. I only put them on like one side because otherwise when I close the sandwich it's gonna be a moist disaster. But I don't know if you can see, I got a pathetic little streak of beet water on the other side. Yeah, this kind of looks like a rainbow. Now, a sandwich cannot be all condiments and 1/6 beets. It needs some substance. I gotta put something else on. Genoa salami, some crumbled white Stilton, a little bit of lettuce. I don't know about you guys, but I can feel the pride oozing out of this one. Now for the moment of truth. Ketchup on a regular sandwich is a mistake, in my opinion. The orange fig spread is interacting very interestingly with the other things on the sandwich. The bite from the middle is not too bad. The bacon mayo is fine, relish is fine, mayonnaise is fine, although I might be a little disconcerted by the color. What can you do about that? Far end is a interesting bite. I've never had beets on a sandwich before. I love how I'm like responding indignantly to this sandwich. Like as if I wasn't the one that chose to make and then eat it. Wow, this rainbow sandwich feels so empowering. I can literally feel the love. I feel like I'm being myself. You can put whatever you want to on a sandwich, but none of that means anything if you don't make it with pride. Anyway, wow, I feel like a monument to corporate greed already. I can just feel the profit rolling in from this sandwich. Anyway, I don't want to talk about this anymore. Thank you again for watching, and be yourself.